Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Sorry for the slight delay there. We're going to have yet another late night conversation. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. Let's have yet another great late night chat. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, 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 everyone. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. We're going to have yet another great late night great late night conversation. So the way we do things here is first I give my opening remarks. Then from there, we do the roll call where I call you all out as I see you, names and locations. Then from there, I answer your super chat or Rumble rant questions for the rest of the night. So if you got something you want me to talk about in the second half of our program, by all means, send me a super chat or a Rumble rant. Always, always appreciate it. Always, always appreciated when people sure do that thing. But yeah, it's going to be a great conversation tonight. Got a lot to talk about. One thing that I will request of you is if you have a Twitter account, tweet this video out. Just a tip I got from somebody. For some reason, it was a tip. So if you're watching this live, go and tweet it out. If you are watching this afterwards, go and tweet it out. Just a suggestion, just a tip someone gave me. Tweet this out. If you can, go to Twitter and take the URL of the YouTube video and tweet it out. Just a tip, just a hint. Interesting hint I got from somebody today. You know, we have to figure out how we get around algorithmic suppression and manipulation, right? There's all kinds of games that are played. And somebody suggested that nowadays tweeting out videos on YouTube is actually kind of a smart thing to do. And that, you know, hey, I am all for experimenting. So if you have a Twitter account, please tweet out this video. Please just cut and paste the YouTube link and tweet it out. That is my request to you tonight. But folks, couple announcements. Peace Cup is happening this weekend in Los Angeles. So if you are in the Los Angeles area this weekend, I urge you to go to the Peace Cup, which is a very, very important gathering that is happening. Peace Cup 2024 is in LA, sponsored by the LA Galaxy soccer team. It's a United Nations linked soccer tournament dedicated to world peace. They aim to do Peace Cup 2025 in Pyongyang in North Korea, and they're trying to build up for that. That's why I was just out in LA. So check out Peace Cup 2025, not tomorrow, but the next weekend, a week from tomorrow in Los Angeles. It's going to be happening. So check out Peace Cup 2025. If you are not yet a member of the Center for Political Innovation, we would love to have you as a member of the Center for Political Innovation. We just had our board meeting of the Center for Political Innovation, and we set the date for our next national convention. Very exciting, in the year of 2025. And I'll be talking about that later tonight at some point. I'll probably give you some more updates on that. But the Center for Political Innovation is moving ahead as an organization. We are a group. We advocate for a government of action that fights for working families. We are anti-imperialists, out of the movement to the masses. So if you would like to become part of a movement of anti-imperialists who love our country and love our communities, by all means, join the Center for Political Innovation. Our website is cpiusa.org. Join the Center for Political Innovation. we would love to have you. I'll just type the address in here. Love to have you as a member, cpiusa.org. Love to have you join the group. So if you are interested, if it sounds like the kind of group you would like to join, advocating for peace with Russia, peace with China, peace with Iran and Venezuela, a new America for working families, we'd love to have you as a member of our group. And we're going to have a national convention in the Chicago area, but I'm not going to say too much about that now because we got plenty of time. But a lot of exciting things are happening. As Alex Rickel, one of our members out in Oregon, says, CPI is rising. And we are. We are a community of people, and we are an in real life community. We are not an internet fandom. We are not some, internet fandom. We are an in real life community of people getting real shit done and supporting each other in these hard times. So hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notifications bell. And as I said before, tweet this out. Tweet this out. If you have a Twitter, tweet this out. That is just a suggestion I got. If you have an X, I guess, right? What's Twitter? Well, LOL, right? There is no Twitter anymore. If you have an X, make a tweet on X about this. Let's see what happens with that. Let's just see, right? You never know about these things. You never really know. So the way these streams work, as always, opening remarks, then the roll call, then I answer your questions for the rest of the night. So if you have some good questions, shoot them my way. All right. So folks, yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, the Russian president was in North Korea. And yesterday he was in Vietnam, the Socialist Republic of Vietnam. And this is very exciting. Now, he gave a very important press conference in Vietnam, the Russian president did, where he took a lot of questions about the conflict in Ukraine, about Asia. But he met with the president of Vietnam. And there's a lot we could point out there. But, last time that we did this, I gave kind of a history last night of Russia. And how, their struggle against imperialism. And I talked about People's Korea and their struggle against imperialism. Let's talk about Vietnam and their struggle against imperialism, right? Vietnam was a colony of French colonialism, French imperialism. And after the Second World War, they wanted their independence. And there was a struggle for independence. And North Vietnam got its independence. And in South Vietnam, you had a puppet government propped up by the United States. But the people of South Vietnam wanted to be free and continued fighting for their independence. So the U.S. government lied. And they had the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was staged. It was a false flag in order to convince the American public that it was necessary to send troops to Vietnam. And you can read about this. The Gulf of Tonkin incident was a false flag. Our government staged a fake attack on an American ship in order to convince the American people that it was okay to send American boys off to Vietnam. Lyndon Johnson, the president of the United States, who became president after the death of Kennedy, had run for office in 1964 on a platform that he was not going to escalate and get the USA further involved into Vietnam. And that's exactly what he did. And it took a false flag operation to set the stage for it. And then after that, the USA escalated its military presence to prop up the Western colonial puppet regime in South Vietnam. And the government of South Vietnam was propped up by the United States. And the people there didn't want it. And there was an anti-colonial struggle. And that anti-colonial struggle just kept getting bigger. And every effort to try and beat it back failed. And it was largely the women that were the center of that anti-colonial struggle. The majority of the Vietnamese National Liberation Front's fighters in South Vietnam were women. And it was women acting very, very heroically. And eventually, 1975, South Vietnam fell and Vietnam was reunified. And since Vietnam reunified, things in the country have gotten quite a bit better. Now, the immediate aftermath of the Vietnam War was particularly bad because after the U.S. imperialists were driven out of Vietnam, there was then the USA backed Pol Pot and armed an extremist who called himself a communist, Pol Pot, and he fought with Vietnam. And you had the Kampuchea War. You had then China invading Vietnam, to support Kampuchea, and that following the 1975 reunification of Vietnam, there was another 5 years of war and instability in the region. And that's, they try to use that to say, oh, that's what happens when the USA leaves. Well, the USA was making it happen. We now know the USA was arming Pol Pot and enabling him to do what he did. China's intervention into Vietnam was done almost as a gesture to the United States. So Vietnam really didn't formally get peace until about 1980. Since then, the life expectancy of the Vietnamese people has increased by 40 years. There's been a 40-year increase in the life expectancy of the Vietnamese people. The World Economic Forum publishes articles about the economic miracle taking place in Vietnam with this socialist-oriented market economy. In Vietnam, they provide free health care to children in the country. In Vietnam, they have done a huge amount to enable there to be tech infrastructure, access to the internet, and it is leading to an economic boom. And millions of people in Vietnam are being lifted out of poverty. And that is the context in which the Russian president visited Vietnam. The Communist Party runs Vietnam. The living standard in Vietnam is rising. They are one of the strongest rising economies in Asia. People are being lifted out of poverty. Foreign investment is being utilized in line with the Communist Party and their 5-year economic plans. Vietnam is rising as a country. So I want to show you, first of all, one of the most important things that the Russian president did while he was there is he went to the tomb of Ho Chi Minh. Now, Ho Chi Minh was the founder of the Vietnamese Communist Party. He's the national liberation hero of Vietnam. He died long before Vietnam was reunified. He died, but he was the symbol of Vietnam's anti-colonial and national liberation movement. He was a communist fighter and a liberation hero of the Vietnamese people. He's the founder of communism in Vietnam, and Russian President Vladimir Putin visited his tomb. Now, just to mention, the body of Ho Chi Minh is inside the mausoleum there. They don't allow photography of it, but Ho Chi Minh's body is preserved, kind of like the Lenin mausoleum. His body is preserved inside of that facility. It's particularly interesting, right? Much like was done to the body of Mao, the body of Lenin. That's where. So inside of this tomb is the preserved body that can be viewed of Ho Chi Minh, the national liberation hero of the Vietnamese people. That's Putin going in to view the body of the national hero of Vietnam. As you can see, the whole Russian delegation is following after him to see the body of Ho Chi Minh. So on that note, I thought there's nothing more appropriate than to play the Ballad of Ho Chi Minh, the great folk song. And who wrote the Ballad of Ho Chi Minh originally? Who wrote it? Ewan McCool, the communist folk singer from Britain. He wrote the Ballad of Ho Chi Minh. Ewan McCool wrote it, but this is Raymond Cook performing the Ballad of Ho Chi Minh.
Far away across the ocean, far beyond the sea's eastern rim, lives a man who is father of the Indo-Chinese people, and his name it is Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. From Viet Bac to the Saigon Delta, from the mountains and the plains below, young and old workers, peasants and the toiling tenant farmers fight for freedom with Uncle Ho. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Now Ho Chi Minh was a deep-sea sailor. He served his time out on the seven seas. Work and hardship were part of his early education. Exploitation is ABC. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Now Ho Chi Minh came back from sailing, and he looked on his native land, saw the want and the hunger of the Indo-Chinese people, foreign soldiers on every hand. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Now Ho Chi Minh went to the mountains, and he trained a determined band. Heroes all who had sworn to free the Indo-Chinese people, drive invaders from the land. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. 14 men became 100,000, and Ho Chi Minh forged and tempered the army of the Indo-Chinese people, freedom's army of Viet Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Every soldier is a farmer. Comes the evening and he grabs his hoe. Comes the morning, he swings his rifle on his shoulder. 'Tis the army of Uncle Ho. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. From the jungles and the mountains, from the rice lands to the plain of reeds, march the men and the women of the Indo-Chinese army, planting freedom with victory seeds. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. From Viet Bac to the Saigon Delta, march the armies of Viet Minh, and the wind stirs the banners of the Indo-Chinese people, peace and freedom, and Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho, ho, Ho Chi Minh. Ho!
Alrighty, so that is the Ballad of Ho Chi Minh. That's Raymond Crook's version of it. But there was a Vietnamese general who recently gave an interview to RT about the Russian president's visit and such. So let's hear from the Vietnamese general.
Vietnam and the Russian Federation are taking new developments at a higher and more practical level in all areas, in politics, culture, trade, science and technology. And I also expect that after the visit of President Putin, it will reach a new level in the strategic partnership, the comprehensive cooperation between the Russian Federation and Vietnam. Historically, Vietnam was very interested in Russian equipment and weapons that had helped Vietnam in two resistant wars, against France and especially against the United States. And in the current period, Vietnam is very interested in a new technology of Russia. That is for drone and electronic warfare, as well as other areas such as the Air Force, Navy, artillery and other equipment for the army. It conveys a message that Vietnam is a bridge between countries in the region and countries in the world. Russia and Vietnam will contribute to building trust, stability of the region, and to develop worldwide peace.
So yeah, now I want to comment on a couple things because, you know, we always try to give you a deeper level of analysis here, right? On the surface of this, you say, okay, there's a communist government, won its independence from U.S. imperialism, establishes a communist regime. Russia is fighting against American imperialism. True. Vietnam established itself as an anti-imperialist country. True. They're cooperating with each other. True. But there's a little bit more to this story because almost immediately after Vietnam established its reunification, we know it was attacked by Cambodia, and then it had a war with China, the Kampuchea War. And China and Vietnam don't get along with each other. And that difference between the Vietnamese and the Chinese people, despite the fact that they are both communist governments that were won and established themselves in anti-colonial revolutions, that difference has been one of the main vehicles the U.S. imperialists have used to try and divide the communist world. You know, when China invaded Vietnam, that was a very, very tragic moment because you had communists on both sides killing each other. And there are territories that are disputed. There are islands that are disputed that the Vietnamese claim, that the Chinese also claim. And there are disagreements there. And because of that, you know, we saw the United States, especially under Barack Obama, courting Vietnam as an ally against China. And U.S. President Barack Obama went to Vietnam, the first American president to go to Vietnam. He went there, and Vietnam hosted American battleships that were docked in Vietnam as a statement against China. That was not good. And Vietnam has been going back and forth, even though it's a communist government, even though it comes out of an anti-colonial, anti-imperialist struggle, because of its rivalry with China and because of the historic differences between China and Vietnam. China has pivoted into the U.S. camp at times. And that is an important thing to keep in mind when looking at this recent development. Now, what happened? Well, as you can see, Vietnam just rolled out the red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, why? How did we get to this point? Because this is a really, really big victory for Russia. This is a really big victory in a way for China, even though China was not there. This shows that China and Vietnam are in a good spot. What's going on here? Well, one factor is that Donald Trump, when he became president, we all know that Donald Trump built up kind of a coalition of right-wing communities in the United States. One of the biggest supporters of Donald Trump were the Iranian exile community, the Mujahideen Khalq, and the monarchists of Iran. They all supported Donald Trump because Donald Trump's a big supporter of Israel and he hates the Islamic Republic of Iran. We know the Miami Cubans were big supporters of Donald Trump because they hate communism and they hate Cuba, and so they support Donald Trump. And that Donald Trump went out of his way to pander to right-wing immigrant communities that have a particular short-term vendetta against a government, right? That Donald Trump very much rolled back a lot of what Barack Obama did in terms of relations with Cuba. And the reason that he did that was because he was pandering to the Miami Cubans. And he went to Miami. He gave an anti-communist speech in Miami. It was disgusting and it was awful. We also know that Donald Trump, engaged in all kinds of theatrics against Iran, and he also murdered Qasem Soleimani, and he ripped up the Iran nuclear deal. These things happen, right? Donald Trump was pandering to these right-wing communities. Well, one of the right-wing communities, there is a very large number of Vietnamese people who fled from South Vietnam after the war ended, people who lost the Vietnam War. There's a lot of them in the United States. They came here. They fled from from Vietnam after the Communist Revolution. They came to the United States, and those folks hate the Vietnamese communist government. And it's kind of interesting because a lot of Vietnamese anti-communists are Roman Catholic. And I noticed this when I was in Cleveland, but they have special Catholic churches for certain immigrant communities where they speak not English as would normally be done in an American Catholic church, but rather they speak the native language. They speak Vietnamese, they speak Spanish, for Cuban communities. They speak Russian or Ukrainian or Eastern European languages. They have Catholic churches that are for a specific immigrant community. And these churches, rather than just preaching standard Christianity, people go to these churches in their native language, and they hear anti-communism every Sunday. And that this is, the Vietnamese community in the United States. There's a lot of Vietnamese Catholic churches that you go to, and Vietnamese speakers can go to them, and Vietnamese Americans can go to them. But instead of hearing just regular Christianity, they hear news from Vietnam about how awful the Vietnamese government is, about how it's persecuting people, etc. Now, the Roman Catholic Church is free to practice in Vietnam, as are a number of different Christian groups. However, there is a very anti-communist Christian activist community that is aligned with the United States that tries to destabilize Vietnam. And those folks have been jailed, etc. Donald Trump, when he was president, really wanted the right-wing Vietnamese American crowd to vote for him. So he really went out of his way to pander to the anti-communist Vietnamese immigrant community very hard. And that had the effect of undoing a bit of what Barack Obama did. And so it seems that Vietnam and China got closer. Now, when Russia's special military operation got going, Vietnam was mostly sympathetic to Russia, but not entirely. There were some statements from some Vietnamese officials that were critical of Russia. But now, as you can see, the Vietnamese government has rolled out the red carpet for Russian President Vladimir Putin. And it looks like at this point, Vietnam is very solidly in the camp of Russia, which means that China and Russia and North Korea are together. And it means that the anti-imperialist alliance of countries is stronger than ever. And this is very, very important, right? Because a lot of people ask me, Caleb, is Russia a socialist country? And I mean, if you want to get technical about it, no. But at this point, Russia has been completely blocked out of the Western imperialist economy. And its closest allies are China and North Korea and Vietnam and Cuba and Venezuela and Nicaragua and all the communist governments of the world, Iran, Syria, governments that come out of anti-colonial revolutions. Russia's closest friends are anti-colonial, anti-imperialist, and communist governments. And the Western capitalist economy has done everything it can to lock out Russia and block Russia out of their economy. And Russia's economy is largely controlled by the state. It's centered around state-run oil and gas. And Russia is now leading the BRICS alliance, which is an attempt to build a new international banking system and a new currency independent of American imperialism. I mean, you want to sit there, is Russia socialist or not? I mean, if they were socialist, how much different would it be? Maybe there'd be less income inequality. But then again, there's a lot of income inequality in China, right? There's a lot of billionaires in China. So you want to quibble about, is somebody socialist or aren't they socialist? At the end of the day, what matters is, are you imperialist? Are you on the side of the imperialists, or are you anti-imperialist? That's what matters, because we know that there were plenty of people who thought they were socialists until World War I broke out, and they supported World War I. And that there are all kinds of socialists in the British Labour Party, people who call themselves socialists. There are all kinds of socialists in the government of France and Norway and Sweden, but none of those are socialist countries, because that any socialism they would build would be based on imperialism. It would be based on the imperialist super profits. It would be based on the domination of the world by Western banks and corporations. So it couldn't be socialism. Meanwhile, we also know that the only way a country can really break out of imperialism and control its own economy and develop is with a planned economy. So any country that is imperialist and is on the side of the imperialists cannot be socialist, more or less. And any country that is opposing the imperialists is going to have to move towards socialism in order to resist imperialism. So at the end of the day, the question is a country anti-imperialist or not? And Russia clearly is, and Vietnam clearly is. And so that's what we need to know. Now, I'm going to highlight some of the comments that were made by the Russian president when he spoke in Vietnam. I'm going to highlight some of them. So here we go.
I mentioned that we are already thinking about what could be changed in the nuclear doctrine and our nuclear strategy, and it has to do with the emergence of, at least we are aware that our potential adversary is working on that. There are certain elements that will reduce the threshold of using the nuclear weapon. There are in development nuclear warheads of the lower capacity, and we know that among experts in the West there are certain ideas being floated that such strike weapons could be used, and it wouldn't be nothing horrible. It may not be horrible, but we must notice that, so we pay attention to that. That's why we're making these statements, that it is possible to introduce certain changes to our strategy. As for the preemptive strike, we don't need that. Because if we respond, then our enemy will be destroyed.
Yeah, so Russia is not going to preemptively use nuclear weapons. That's what he said. Now, they're talking about re-examining Russia's nuclear policy in light of the fact that they have smaller nuclear weapons. But this idea that Russia is going to nuke the world, they've been playing that up in mainstream media. And he just said there, look, we're not going to do preemptive nuclear strikes, right? We may change our nuclear doctrine because of the use of tactical nuclear weapons, smaller nuclear weapons. We may change things, but we're not going to be preemptively using nukes.
Well, like you said, I never said that President Zelensky is illegitimate. It's the legal analysis done by our legal experts. That's just what their constitution says. Their article in their constitution says that the term is 5 years. I think it was Article 108, 109 or 110 or 112. It says that in wartime, in martial law, the authority goes, including the commander-in-chief authority, goes to a different official. And it all says that that is all covered in the Ukrainian constitution. It doesn't say that the authorities, the powers of the president are extended. And there is a decision of the Constitutional Court of Ukraine of 2015, which says quite clearly that the term of the Ukrainian president is 5 years, no more nor less. What are we even talking about? In the West, I think they just don't want. The West just doesn't want to change a president for a different figure. It's obvious they have their hands full with other things, and it's Zelensky who'll be charged with making all the unpopular decisions. And after they're done with him, he will be replaced.
Yeah, did you hear that? According to Ukraine's own constitution, Zelensky is not a legitimate president, right? Because they haven't had an election. He was elected and his term is up. And the constitution doesn't say, oh, if there's a war, you can just call off the elections. It says, no, in times of war, there's another official who becomes the leader of the country. So it's very clear, very, very clear that Zelensky does not have legitimacy. I mean, at this point, we're propping up a dictator. And they say that Russia's government is a dictatorship, which it's not. I was there to witness the elections. But the Ukrainian president, who's supposed to be the poster child for democracy, he's not supposed to be running the country according to the Constitution, but he still is. And if you are not following the law and you're not following the Constitution of your country, you're just kind of letting whoever's in power stay in power, and he's got the military behind him, that's called dictatorship. Zelensky is a dictator. He has not been elected. His term is up, and that the Constitution doesn't say, oh, you get to stay in until the war is over. No, it says in a martial law situation, the president isn't even the one who's in charge. Zelensky has no legal right to be running Ukraine right now. Now, you would think all this stuff, oh, we got to defend Ukraine, the democracy. Ukraine is not following its own constitution at this point. You think that might be like an important point? Oh, we're defending democratic Ukraine from authoritarian Russia. Oh my. Ukraine isn't even following their own goddamn constitution, okay? Not only have they rounded up and arrested all kinds of dissidents, not only are they persecuting the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, not only have they outlawed the Communist Party and all the dissident parties, basically, the socialists, all kinds of dissident parties. Not only are they tearing down the World War II memorials, not only have they outlawed the Russian language and dragged people into court for speaking the language they've spoken their whole life and made them pay tickets, but now they're not even following their own constitution. And we're supposed to believe, oh, well, this is about democracy. This is a democracy. Very, very good points that the Russian president makes.
To that additionally, but it's really close to crossing this line. We are analyzing this because what are we speaking here? Those who supply these weapons, they believe that...
We already showed that one. All right, already showed that one, but there's another one, I think. Hold on. Here we go.
I said that we weren't the ones who refused to be part of the negotiations. The Ukrainian party banned these negotiations for themselves. We have never refused to do that, but not based on any kind of formulas, but based on the agreements. Once again, I repeat it, this agreement was reached during the difficult talks that took almost 1.5 months, and we are ready to go on this foundation, to go on with this dialogue with the Ukrainian side. And where it happens, it doesn't matter, in Minsk, in Istanbul, or in Switzerland. For how long these conditions are true. We have this proposal on the table. Doesn't depend on us anymore. When all the interested parties will take what they have on their table and they will engage in these talks. They can do it tomorrow, but it's up to them when they will express this will to do that. It will all depend on what happens in real life, and then we will come from this. But that's our principled approach.
Yeah, Russia has been willing to negotiate from the beginning, but Ukraine's own laws forbid negotiating with Russia. And the idea that Russia should just, end its special military operation before you can negotiate, that's not realistic at all. That is not a realistic approach to negotiations at all. So, that's important to keep in mind. Russia offered a very good peace deal recently. They had that press conference in Switzerland in which the Russians were not invited, not the press conference, the so-called peace conference, where they didn't invite Russia. And they didn't invite Russia, and then they called it a peace conference. Well, if there's two countries that are having a war and you want to negotiate peace between them, you got to invite both countries. And they didn't do that. So there you go. Hold on, I've got another clip, about from the Russian president in Vietnam from his press conference. I think this is not from his press conference. This is from a speech he gave in Vietnam. We'll put that on.
Трудно переоценить ваш вклад в укрепление российско-вьетнамских отношений, которые, как сказано в принятом сегодня совместном российско-вьетнамском заявлении, носят характер всеобъемлющего стратегического партнерства. Хочу особо подчеркнуть, что в России всегда вызывали...
I would like to emphasize that Russia has always shown sincere respect for the courage, resilience, and heroism of the Vietnamese in their struggle for independence. Damn.
Искреннее уважение, мужество, стойкость, героизм вьетнамцев в борьбе за свою независимость, а также трудолюбие вьетнамского народа, который с честью...
As well as the hard work of the Vietnamese people, who with honor went through most difficult trials.
Прошел через тяжелейшие испытания, защитил независимость и свободу своего отечества.
Defended the independence and freedom of their homeland, their bright culture, and their historical heritage.
Свою яркую культуру и богатое историческое наследие. Считаю, что борьба за свои...
I believe that the struggle for its historical roots, for its traditional values, there he goes, traditional values. See, they're talking about anti-imperialism and traditional values, is extremely important for any state.
Исторические корни за свои традиционные ценности является чрезвычайно важным для любого государства, для любой страны и для...
For any country and for any people who want to preserve themselves as such and preserve their identity.
Любого народа, который хочет сохраниться как таковой и сохранить свою идентичность.
Yeah, that was the Russian president's remarks. Now, if you haven't had a chance to watch the video of CPI at the World Youth Festival, you really should, because in the video, you will see us talking with the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union. They attend all the global communist youth gatherings. They're always at them, and we always get a chance to meet with leaders of the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union. So I might show some of that on here. I'm obviously not going to show the whole World Youth Festival video. But, our video of attending the World Youth Festival, it's about, it's almost an hour. And it just shows many meetings with many people from many different parts of the world. It shows you what this huge, international gathering was like. And we had 3 CPI members there, Tom Michalak, Noah Shank, and myself. And we were there. We got to actually speak to the Russian president at one of his press conferences. It was really great. So, I'm going to show you a couple clips that are related to what we're talking about today about Vietnam. The important thing to remember about the Russian president's trip to North Korea and his trip to Vietnam is that these were not just trips, right? At all of these trips, they established strategic military alliance. Basically, North Korea and Vietnam have both said what China has said, which is Russia, we've got your back. These are military alliances that are being formed at this point. The Russian military and the Vietnamese military are aligned with each other, geostrategic alliance against the United States and Asia. The North Korean military and the Russian military are aligned with each other. The Chinese already have such an arrangement with Russia. There's a pretty solid anti-imperialist camp at this point, folks. That is what you need to remember. And that is what I think is some people don't seem to realize. But yeah, I'm downloading the video from the World Youth Festival. I want you to see kind of what different aspects of this international gathering. I did drop the link in the chat if you want to watch the whole video for yourself, because it was really, really important. The World Youth Festival. It's a really, really important gathering. These tradition of communist youth festivals that the Russian government, the Soviet Union started after World War II. You have the World Festival of Youth and Students, and I've been to 2 of those. And this is a new brand that the Russian government has started called World Youth Festival. Or World Festival of Youth, depending on the translation. And that this is a new brand the Russian government has started. And CPI, we are really honored to be part of this. One of our members is actually headed to Russia in a couple of weeks for another World Youth Festival meeting. I can't go because I have to be here to cover the NATO summit in Washington, D.C. But another one of our representatives is going to the planning meeting for the next one. And they're looking to have some kind of World Youth Festival event every year now. Now they're going to have big ones every 4 or 5 years. But it looks like they're looking to have some kind of World Youth Festival event every year now. And this is really, really important because it's a place that young people who are anti-imperialist, who are supporting the new economy that's rising around the world, who support multipolarity, this is where they can gather. It's very, very, very important. And again, people don't understand how important these kind of gatherings are, right? A lot of people, we live in an age where a lot of people think it's all about passive entertainment. And, watching things online is fine. Y'all are watching me. But the point of me talking to you, I want you all to join an in real life movement. I want you to have the joy and the support and the comradeship that comes from being part of an in real life movement, an in real life organization. I would like you to have that experience because there's nothing else like it. And I believe human beings need that experience. People need to be part of a community. People need to have a purpose. People need to have something to live for. And that it's a very important thing for people to have, is that ability to know what it's like to be part of a community, to strive and to work for a goal. Maybe as we're waiting for this World Youth Festival video to finish downloading, it's being slow. I don't know why it's being slow. Maybe I can try it on another app. I was just downloading it from my YouTube, but maybe I should try an app. But maybe while we're doing that, I'll show you a quick clip from our CPI convention where I talked about the kind of organization that we are striving to be. So yeah, maybe I'll put that clip on, because, I can't show this enough. I really, really can't show this enough. We are a community of people. I'll just show you this. Wisdom that was passed down to me. We can be critical of different figures, but Sam Marcy, an important leader of communism in the post-war years, he would often talk about how at the anti-war protests that happened during the 1960s, where you'd have hundreds of thousands of people marching against the Vietnam War, there'd be these beautiful puppets that they would build. They'd have puppets of, Richard Nixon with his money or whatever. They'd have puppets of the heroic Vietnamese people fighting for their liberation, these beautiful puppets. That there were whole communities of people, and they weren't members of any communist group, but they were against the Vietnam War and had a general leftist, anti-imperialist view, and they made it their mission that when there was a big anti-war rally, they would come together and they would make these beautiful works of art as their contribution to opposing the war in Vietnam. And there were whole communities that built these puppets. It was their project, their way of being creative, of building community and coming together. And there were couples who met each other through the process of making those puppets. And a couple of years later, they were there making the puppets with their little kids that they had just had. And there were whole communities of people, and they made it their mission. This is something that we can do. Imperialism is the enemy of humanity. The Vietnam War is horrible. And this is something we can do. We have a 9-to-5 job, we have a regular life, but this is something that we can do. And we can do it together, and we can bond, and that's beautiful. And what Sam Morrissey would tell his followers is that that community that built those puppets, that's 1,000 times more valuable than some kid who thinks he's Lenin. You know what I'm saying? A community like that has longevity. People are doing that their whole life, and they're taking on a contribution. And that you know, if you've been doing this as long as I have, which is, you know, not that long, relatively speaking, but you realize that there are some people who come around and they see that they don't get the immediate result that they want. They see that they don't, you know, they don't fulfill their dictator fantasy that they have. You know, they see that they, you know, they see that this isn't exactly the way they want to resolve their parental issues or whatever. And then they go away after a year. They go away after a year. For a year, they know more than everybody. No one knows anything better. They can debate everybody, but they're gone. But those people who came together to build the puppets and build community around it and learn to work together, they keep going. And generation after generation, year after year, they build those puppets. And that is what we need to build with the Center for Political Innovation. We need a network of people who are committed to opposing imperialism, who learn to trust each other and rely on each other and carry out operations, build some beautiful puppets, some beautiful artwork, put on beautiful conferences, and keep this movement alive. That is what we need to build. We need a network of people who love each other and trust each other and can work together and can serve the purpose of representing the anti-imperialist movement in America. That is what we need, and that is what I want us to build with the Center for Political Innovation. Yeah, that is what we're trying to do. And, you know, my goal, I am not, you know, I'm not making any bones about what my goal is. My goal is to recruit you for that purpose. So I'll show you some of the event in Russia. I'll show you some of the festival.
You know, you would think people would be mean to you. You thought maybe you might get in trouble not doing anything. But when you come here, everybody's so welcoming and friendly, and everybody wants to talk to you. They want to know what you have to think, and they listen, and they speak very good English as well.
Yeah, actually, I've spoken to quite a bit of the guys from different parts from America Latina, because I also speak Spanish, and from guys from Africa. Unfortunately, I couldn't speak with the guys from China because I don't speak Chinese.
At home, sometimes students would come and they would work for like the summer where I grew up. So I knew a few Russians. I knew they weren't like rude or nasty people. But you know, there's sometimes people think that they might be a little short with you, or they're very, you know, impersonal. But you know, when you come here, it's not like that at all.
What is your personal purpose to be here?
Well, I'm here with an organization called the Center for Political Innovation, right? And what we do is we educate Americans about the world beyond the global U.S. empire. And we're here to try and foster friendship with people around the world, including the people of Russia. We want to show them that not all Americans hate them, and we want to show Americans that they don't hate us.
We've got some Cubans dancing here in the lobby of the airport building. They're kind of doing an impromptu dance.
Well, there certainly is antagonism between our countries, but I think that many Americans are starting to wake up and see the lies that they have been told their whole life about countries like Russia. And more as people are becoming more unhappy with the state of the economy at home, they're starting to see that their enemies are not the Russian people, it's the criminals on Wall Street who are keeping them.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So, what is your name?
My name is Ilya. I'm from Donetsk People's Republic. I'm from Donetsk.
Unfortunately, every day they're being shot by the Ukrainian nationalists. It's on a daily basis.
Но несмотря на это мы работаем,
Despite this, they keep working
занимаемся
hard.
волонтерством,
He's a volunteer. He's one of the chief in volunteering.
помогаем нуждающимся.
They are constantly supporting those who are in need, in the front line especially. Like recently, they liberated the Avdiivka region.
Стараемся радоваться каждому прожитому дню.
And they are very thankful to God and happy for each which they live.
And you were happy when Russia sent its soldiers to protect you.
И вы были счастливы, когда Россия приехала защитить вас, правильно?
Конечно.
Totally happy. They've been waiting for this for a long time.
Без них мы бы не справились.
Without Russia, that would be nearly impossible for them to fight off the nationalists.
Yeah, because the way the American media presents it, it's like Russia is attacking you, Russia is colonizing you, but you've been calling for Russia to move in to protect you since 2014.
США часто говорят, что Россия это колонизатор, но на самом деле Донецк звал Россию на протяжении...
Да, большего количества лет, начиная не с 14 года, с 91-го.
From 1991, right after the collapse of the Soviet Union, they wanted to develop Russia, they've been calling for Russia, but they took an actual, real actions started from 2014 when there was a military coup in Ukraine.
Now, how has your family been affected? You know, what experiences have you personally had?
Что произошло с твоей семьей после 2014 года?
Мой отец ушел на фронт.
His father volunteered to be a soldier in DPR army, and he's still in the army fighting.
Я с 14 года стал заниматься волонтерской
Starting from
деятельностью.
2014, he was still adolescent. He started volunteering to help his republic. So from day one, he's been in support of DPR.
And I understand there's been shelling and bombing of your region.
Постоянно стреляют, бомбят,
Да, к сожалению, это уже стало частью жизни.
Unfortunately, it's just a normal part of their life now. They're so used to it.
Не обращая внимания на
And
это.
you don't even pay attention. Sometimes they study, they hear the shelling, and they find it. Oh, we are used to it.
And what was it like to have shelling and bombing happening every day?
Тяжело.
It's not easy, especially at first.
Ты всегда понимаешь, что ты можешь выйти из дома и вернуться.
Especially because you understand, you can leave the house and the next thing that happens, you're dead, right? So living with this sort of thought is not easy.
For 8 years you endured this.
Да.
Yeah, for 8 years.
Несмотря на это, ты все равно пытаешься строить планы.
But despite this, you're still making plans for your future.
Да, самое главное это не унывать.
The most important thing is always be motivated, always be happy,
Потому
focused.
что, зная, если у тебя есть мысли про будущее, то у тебя есть обязанность их выполнить.
Because if you think ahead about the future, you're responsible to accomplish them. It keeps you focused, it keeps you in a good tone, so you keep working hard.
Wow. Well, it's an honor to meet you. Me too. Thank you. I'm with the people of the Donetsk People's Republic. Thank you. Okay.
You know this phrase, right?
I don't know how to say it, so say it. Let's say it slowly. Donbass. Porozhenak. Ne Golit. Gonit. Donbass. Porozhenat. Ne Gonit. Donbass. Porozhenat. De Gonit. Okay.
All right. Alright, we have a person from Donetsk and from the United States of America. And what do you want to say?
Donbass, Porozhenat, Ne Gonit. All right. So it seems the Palestinian delegation is leading a kind of a mourning ceremony, and they're dancing in a circle.
I studied in the UK for 10 years.
10 years?
Yeah, before going back to Vietnam.
Oh, like in like growing up, did you go to college or university there?
I go to I study college and then university undergraduate and postgraduate in UK, and then go back to Vietnam to continue my work.
Very nice. It's really cool. It's very awesome to meet you guys.
Hello, I'm Thomas Michalak, speaking from the Center for Political Innovation. As you may tell from my dress, I didn't anticipate speaking today. I'm filling in for Caleb Maupin, the founder of the Center for Political Innovation. I think the subject, even just
something must do with America want to cross the US border illegally and run
relations between the United States and Russia, and
all strive for this. Even the
operations, demonstration events, parades, many different countries participating, and it just shows the deep roots of relations that Russia has with so many countries. I mean, so many Latin American countries, so many African countries, the Middle East, Asia. I mean, it's just so many parts of the world that have a very, very deep relationship with Russia. And, you know, in his remarks to the closing ceremony of the festival, where Putin was able to appear in person, he talked about the traditional values that kind of transcend cultures that bring us all together. This is what he said.
Despite all our differences, there is something that unites us. In Russia, we call this our traditional values. This is the foundation of our life, something that we all have in common. We are all equal from the moment we are born, thanks to our mother and father. This is how people are born. There is no other way, even with modern technology. We are all born equal. But here comes the question, are we growing up, developing equally? Unfortunately, no. There are no equal conditions in the world for everyone. And that is the main injustice of today's world. Is it possible to secure equal conditions for everyone to grow and develop? I don't know. But what I do know is that we should all strive for this. Even the very fact of striving to make the world more democratic, more stable, balanced and safer.
Was it warm enough?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely warm, and the hospitality is great. Seeing the enthusiasm of the volunteers, we're just so excited for the festival to begin, and they're high-fiving us all and welcoming us. There's a glowing optimism that comes from this event.
El acto de la juventud con Chávez desde Sochi y con Nicolás. Quiero también acompañar el señor embajador, el excelentísimo embajador de la República de Honduras. Me acompaña aquí Juan Ramón Elvir.
Revolucionario, saludo solidario y revolucionario. Dale esa.
Fidel Castro, Lenin, Mao Mao, Ho Chi Minh. Fidel Castro, Lenin, Mao Mao, Ho Chi Minh. Fidel Castro, Lenin, Mao Mao, Ho Chi Minh. Fidel Castro, Lenin.
And I think this festival is a very noble tradition, and I'm really glad that the Russian president has opted to continue this tradition from the Soviet period that has changed the lives of literally millions of people in the world and brought them into a movement for a new world beyond imperialism.
Socialista, circula, imperialista, América Latina va a ser toda socialista.
La esperanza es la retina, la esperanza es el calibre, y para que el alma vibre por encima de la piel, vivan Chávez y Fidel, viva Palestina libre.
Free, free Palestine! 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 Free, free Palestine!
Vive tu vida.
Jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido. El pueblo unido jamás será vencido.
When I come back, I'm going to tell them about all the wonderful memories, all the people we met, how much work clearly went into this huge festival and all the amazing things we saw. This is the future.
I would like everyone to stand up for the pledge. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. We pledge that we shall remember this unity.
We pledge that we shall remember this unity.
Forged at the end of the Second World War.
Forged at the end of the Second World War.
Not only today, not only this week, this year, but always.
Not only today, not only this year,
but always. Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for.
Until we have built the world we have dreamed of and fought for.
We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world.
We pledge ourselves to build the unity of the people of the world.
All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs.
All races, all colors, all nationalities, all beliefs.
To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth.
To eliminate all traces of fascism from the earth.
to build a deep and sincere international friendship among the peoples of the world.
To build a deep and sincere international friendship among the peoples of the world.
To keep a just, lasting peace, to eliminate want, frustration, and enforced idleness.
To keep a just, lasting peace, to eliminate want, frustration, and forced idleness.
We have come to confirm the unity of all people, to salute our comrades who have died.
We have come to confirm the unity of all people, to salute our comrades who have died,
and pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains, and bold enthusiasm
and pledge our word that skillful hands, keen brains, and bold enthusiasm
shall never more be wasted in war.
Shall never more be wasted in war.
Saw a great banner up ahead. Its meaning set, my heart a pounding, and this is what that banner is. Long live the great unity of the peoples of the world. Long live the great unity of the peoples of the world. Long live the great unity of the peoples of the world. Long live the great unity of the peoples of the world.
Yep. So yeah, you can watch the whole film of the World Youth Festival. We'll see our meetings with the people from Nepal and with people from many different countries. Pretty neat. But anyway, yeah, you know, hey, I've been on here for a good hour and 5 minutes. I got to get up early tomorrow. So why don't we do the roll call and then I'll start answering questions. So names and locations, folks, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations, names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Who's with us? Names and locations. Who's with us? Who is with us tonight? We got Bob in Troy, New York, Alex Rickle in Oregon, Isaac in Vancouver, Nate in Chicago, Diana from Russia, names and locations, Brad in Cleveland, David in Bermuda, Seasoned Noob in China, Joseph from Chicago, Patch in Arizona, Bangkok, Thailand, Alex in Brazil, Dustin Schlesinger, Kirby, Chattanooga, Jenny Lynn in Cincinnati, Harold Dogbottom in Kakalaki, North Carolina or South Carolina, Rice from Adelaide, Australia, Oakville, Ontario, John McCarthy from Chicago, I am not in Russia, Jacob in central Wisconsin, Ed in Kentucky, Detroit, Michigan, Anthony, Quebec to Los Angeles, salutes from Chile, Rachel Winder in Georgia, Rachel in Winder, Georgia, Junior from South Florida, welcome, 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 Denver, Denver, Mosen from Denver, Ryan Clark in Kansas City, Patrick in Maine, Philip High, Brooklyn in the house. We can mention the petition. We've got an article about the petition coming up quickly. Great, important petition. Very good. Santa Ana, California, Stephen Ann in Georgia, Chicago. Wait, is that a new video, Caleb? Why, the video is the video of the World Youth Festival. It's been on the channel for a while. But I will drop the link once more. Hold on. Let me just drop the link for you. Here. Yeah, Rachel in Winder, Georgia. April and Chris in Salt Lake City. Stephen Ann in Georgia. Steve Anna, California. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Ryan in Kansas City. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, names and locations. But yeah, here's the link for the World Youth Festival video. You can watch the whole thing. Let me just type World Youth Festival. All right. There we go. There we go. Oh, we got Steve Whiteley in Georgia, and we got Miguel in South Florida. And there's the World Youth Festival video. Hold on. All right. There we go. Very, very good. All right. Anyone else? Names and locations. Names and locations. Anybody else? Very good. Names and locations, anybody else? So I only have 2 super chats here, and one is from Chris Shipley, and I appreciate it, but he didn't say anything. The other is from John. So now is my time to remind you all that super chats are not just good for giving me something to talk about in the second half of the show. They are very, very good for that. So please do give me something to talk about. I do see there's some Rumble rants I can answer, and that's good. But they're also good to support this channel. They're a way to support this channel. I do live in New York City where my rent is too damn high. It is expensive to live here, but I'm able to have this second bedroom and do these streams every night pretty much. So if you can, send a super chat to support this channel, get me talking, it is appreciated. It makes my life easier, and it, makes me more able to come on here and do these regularly. So on that note, I am going to put on, so this is wild, right? So as I'm waiting for more super chats to come in, and I know you all can, are going to send some more. I want to let you all know. So there's this picture, and I've referred to this picture over and over and over again because I just keep coming back to it because it's so much about what CPI is trying to do, right? This is, from 1976 in Philadelphia. They had the bicentennial, the 200-year anniversary of the United States. There was a big pro-war militarist rally that was held in Philadelphia. So to counter it, the communists had a protest, but there were 2 protests, and one of the protests was called Bicentennial Without Colonies, and it was run by the Weathermen, the Prairie Fire Organizing Committee. It was a circus, and no one remembers it. But the Revolutionary Communist Party, they had their own rally against it with this very, very famous photograph that was taken. Those were the Vietnam veterans they assembled that were part of Vietnam Veterans Against the War, which was controlled by the Revolutionary Communist Party at that time. And they had the march with this banner that says, "We won't fight another rich man's war." And the RCP, they called their rally, "We've carried the rich for 200 years. Now let's dump them off our backs." And their rally was smaller. It was only about 5,000 people. But it had a way bigger impact. You can find all kinds of photos of their rally. Their rally made a difference because it was aimed at the bulk of the people. It wasn't just a big, circus, a big, the other rally, Bicentennial Without Colonies, was every cause you ever heard of, abortion and LGBT, and they bust in Native Americans from reservations and Puerto Rican independence and all kinds of, it was just a circus. Whereas the RCP had a very clear communist rally. We've carried the rich for 200 years. Now let's get them off our backs. We won't fight another rich man's war. They were aiming at the broad masses of people with a clear agitational revolutionary message. It wasn't a collection of liberal activists. It was a communist rally saying that the majority of people in this country are suffering at the hands of the ultra rich, and we needed a new society. And so I've been really talking about that. In order to promote their rally, the RCP, they had a rock band that was aligned with them. It's called Prairie Fire. And Prairie Fire actually recorded a song called 200 Years to promote the Revolutionary Communist Party's rally, their bicentennial rally. And that song was posted on YouTube, and I listened to it, and I thought it was great. It was a great example of like class-conscious revolutionary music. And I think the fact that I've been playing the songs from Prairie Fire, right, back in the 70s when the RCP was still like a group that was aiming for the broad masses of people, they had this rock band Prairie Fire. And the fact that I have been playing their songs on this stream has upset whoever posted them. And I think they've actually taken them down because I'm playing them on here. So luckily, before they took them down, I preserved the song 200 Years, and I preserved their other song called New China, which is another good song. There's a couple other songs by Prairie Fire I liked, but I didn't preserve them. I think whatever YouTube channel it was took them down because they didn't like the fact that I was playing them on here. Well, I saved 2 of their songs. I saved New China, which I've played on here many times, and I saved 200 Years. So I just put 200 Years up on the other YouTube channel, Caleb Maupin Videos, and I'm going to play 200 Years while you all think of some more super chats to ask me. I'm going to play 200 Years, which is the song they wrote for their bicentennial rally. We've carried the rich for 200 years. Now let's dump them off our backs. So, and I've got pictures from the rally as I play the song. And then I will answer people's questions. So send more super chats. Give me something to talk about in the second half of our show, and we shall continue.
When I get home from work each day, it feels like I just worked 200 years. When I see all the bills I gotta pay, seem like to take 200 years. And now we hear this summer celebrate the latest boss's game. But who they calling us when every day we're fighting them? 200 years. 200 years is bicentennial is for. 200 years. The rich want us to slave for them. 200 more. 200 years. 200 years these parasites have sucked our blood. But let's get them off our backs. 200 years is long enough. Well, that must have been some party dumped that British tea back then 200 years. And that must have been some struggle dumping British tyranny back 200 years. But soon King George packing made the rich here free to build their own empire and change and wage slavery. 200 years. 200 years is bicentennial is for. 200 years. The rich want us to slave for them. 200 more. 200 years. These parasites have sucked our blood. But let's get them off our backs. 200 years is long enough. Oh, well, our class built this country. We have labored, we have slaved 200 years. Oh, but they're the class that runs it, taking all the wealth we've made 200 years.
They're coming down, their time is up. 200 years is long.
Their rule has brought us misery, unemployment, crime, and war. But every decent thing we have, our class has fought on for.
200 years.
200 years
is bicentennial.
for.
200 years.
The rich want us to slave for them. 200 more.
200 years.
200 years. These parasites have sucked our blood. Let's get them off our backs. 200 years is long enough. They've hired the finest minds to find out how their system's gonna last 200 years.
It's coming down, their time is up. 200 years is long.
And they're working overtime to cover up the past 200 years.
They're coming down, their time is up. 200 years is long.
They promise peace and plenty as they plan another war. But they've got a little problem, we're not taking any more.
200 years.
200 years is
bicentennial is for. 200 years.
The rich want us to slave for them. 200 more.
200 years.
200 years, these parasites have sucked our blood. Let's get them off our backs. 200 years is long enough. Fellow workers, to our class belongs the future, and it isn't gonna wait 200 years. Oh no. Well, the rich man's time is up, and he's gonna get the cake in a few more years. And with their systematic museums, with the relics of the past, we'll build that future when the workers rule at last. 200 years. 200 years. This bicentennial.
200 years.
Want us to slave for them.
200 more. 200 years.
200 years. These parasites have sucked our blood. But let's get them off our backs. 200 years is long enough. We'll bring them down. Their time is up. 200 years is long enough. We'll bring them down. Their time is up. 200 years is long enough. We'll bring them down. Their time is up. 200 years is long enough.
200 years.
200 years.
This bicentennial is for. 200 years.
The rich want us to slave for them. 200 more.
200 years.
200 years. These parasites have sucked our blood. Let's get them off our backs. Say it, let's get them off our backs. All right, let's get them off our backs. 200 years. years is long enough.
All right. Okay, and you can listen to that on my other YouTube channel, Caleb Maupin Videos. So go and subscribe to my other YouTube channel for like bonus content. And one of the things on that YouTube channel, I just have songs that we play on here. Like that's one thing on there, right? You know, and I also just put clips from these streams. You know, if I have a good presentation one night, I do that. So, yeah, go and subscribe to the other YouTube channel, Caleb Maupin Videos, for bonus content that, you know, I can't just post everything on this channel because then you'd never get a notification. So yeah, one thing you all can do right now is if you want to help this channel, tweet out that I'm streaming right now. That's something you can do. That's a hint somebody gave me. We'll see how that works out. I see a couple more super chats have come in and we got some Rumble rants. Going to answer a couple of those. I'm going to start answering questions. So here we go. First one's from Hempcar. He says, in the NSA document, skunk, bogies, and flying fish, it even says the Prez said those stupid sailors were shooting at fish. And I think he's referring to the Gulf of Tonkin resolution and how it was not a there was not an attack on the U.S. ship. And, you know, Jesse Ventura, the wrestler turned libertarian, he would always talk about that. I fought in Vietnam and I found out the Gulf of Tonkin resolution was a lie. You know, he talked about that a lot because he fought in Vietnam and you know, it turns out that the whole reason he was sent there was a false flag. And people say, oh, false flags never happened. That's a conspiracy theory. Well, Google the Gulf of Tonkin. That was a false flag. Google the Reichstag fire that Hitler did. That was a false flag. So Doc Green for Peace says, that's Rachel, says the Constitution reminds us of freedoms we're supposed to have, like speech. Talk about the founders and economic freedom. What were the founders saying about the lack of economic opportunity? Well, you know, that's interesting because the founders of the United States were intellectuals. They were rebelling against feudalism. And they very much believed in the notion of private property. They very much, but there were different views among the founders, right? Thomas Jefferson often talked as if he was advocating for the rights of small farmers. If you read the writings of Thomas Jefferson, he talks about the yeoman. But in reality, Thomas Jefferson was really advocating for the slave owners. He was just kind of using the small farmers as like a stand-in for the slave owners. Alexander Hamilton was a big advocate of economic development. He believed in economic growth. He believed it was the duty of the state to create economic growth. And there were differences among the founders of the United States. They all wanted the USA to flourish as an economy. And that was really the question in the American Revolution was, would the United States be able to flourish as an economy or not? There were differences among the founders about what that meant and how that would be. But the British Empire wanted the United States to just kind of be a temporary trading hub in their empire. And the founders of the United States wanted the United States to have a flourishing economy. And that was the primary difference between the United States and the British Empire. So there you go. Can you recommend a good book on Russian history, both pre and post revolution? Well, my studies of the Russian Revolutionary Movement, right? I have read, and I, you know, the book that really taught me the most about the Russian Revolutionary Movement is The History of the Communist Party of Soviet Union short course. I really got a lot out of this book, right? It just gives you the whole history of Marxism in Russia from way before anything right up until the time of Stalin, 1936 Soviet Constitution. It's very clearly written. You get a whole history. I do also recommend, you know, there's a couple different texts. I mean, the text that is widely recommended is John Reed's 10 Days That Shook the World. You know, there's also like lectures on the history of the Bolshevik Party by, I think, Bukharin. I actually really enjoyed that. You know, I mean, was it Bukharin or Zinoviev? One of the two actually gave, you know, the history of the Bolshevik Party, a popular outline by Zinoviev. I actually got a lot out of that. It's lectures that Gregory Zinoviev gave on where the Bolshevik movement came from, like what, and that is actually, I really got a lot out of that. Let me see if I can point you toward, that. I can find you a link for that, because I actually really got a lot out of that book. It just kind of gives you a history of the organization. I'll say, well, lecture number 1 is on is on the Marxist Internet Archive. But the book itself, The History of the Bolshevik Party by Gregory Zinoviev. It's pretty good. Now there's a couple other books that I would recommend. For one, I read Trotsky's History of the Russian Revolution, and I found it to actually be pretty good. I mean, he definitely distorts things, and Stalin wrote a critique of his History of the Russian Revolution. He definitely distorts things in order to present things, to present himself in a positive light. But I mean, there's a lot of very good books. This book here, right, which is hard to get your hands on. It's kind of hard to get your hands on. You can probably find a PDF, Human Rights in the Soviet Union by Albert Szymanski. This is actually a very insightful book that talks a lot about the Soviet legal system and how it was set up. I'd recommend that. My goodness, there's just so much that's out there. These books, this is, you can find a lot of copies of this. There's a 2-volume, it's called Soviet Communism, A New Civilization by Sidney and Beatrice Webb. And that is very, very good. Soviet Communism, A New Civilization. This is a pretty good book here. Soviet, but not Russian. It's about the different nationalities of the Soviet Union. The different nationalities that existed, Soviet, but not Russian. And I mean, there's, I always recommend anything by Anna Louise Strong. Anna Louise Strong is very, very amazing. Her book on, the Stalin era by Anna Louise Strong, which you can find a PDF of, is very good. Her autobiography, is very good. I Change Worlds. But here's the PDF of The Stalin Era by Anna Louise Strong, which is a very, very good book. She was a firsthand witness. She lived in the Soviet Union throughout the Stalin years. After Khrushchev gave his secret speech, she felt compelled to write this book, giving her side of the story, because she saw Stalin in a mostly positive light. So there you go. I would recommend that. So yeah, you're asking me for books there. So those are the Rumble rants that have come in. So now I will start answering people's super chat questions. First one, Chris Shipley, thank you very much for your support. Good stuff. So there we go. Now this next one. So John McCarthy is recommending this. John actually just wrote a very good, kind of short article. So one of these anti-Ukraine or anti-Russian, propaganda outlets that's like, from Ukraine, they wrote, a hit piece that was basically just a docs list of various bad people who oppose the U.S. government sending weapons to Ukraine. And we got a very prominent feature in it. We were, very prominently featured. So John McCarthy wrote it up for the CPI website. And he just talked about how we got mentioned as being part of the Rage Against the War Machine, protest. And, we got prominently featured in this hit piece by Texty, which is a Ukrainian propaganda outlet that is indirectly funded by the U.S. State Department, right? And that's what makes it scandalous. This is a group that's targeting and smearing Americans, and it's being funded by the American government. And so there's a beautiful graphic that was part of it, which I think John had the idea I should show on here. So I have to make it a PDF in order to show it. So, but yeah, this is the great graphic that they made, right? This is like their Glenn Beck chalkboard, basically. Let's see, it's processing. Oh my goodness. Oh, here we go. Right. And what's neat is it's got Center for Political Innovation. It's got Angela McCurdle, Gray Zone, Rage Against the War Machine, People's Party, RT. I mean, it's great. I love it. I am so honored that we are listed next to so many important people and that we are part of the emerging anti-monopoly coalition. And I'm very honored by it. I recommend people go and read John's article about it, where it just kind of talks about how this is a U.S. State Department smear. They have done so much. They have spent so much money on quote unquote combating disinformation. Right? I mean, billions of dollars. And they don't tell us what this money is spent on. I'm sure it is spent on troll farms that smear RT people, that smear people that do anti-imperialist work. You know that, right? Because they consider anti-imperialism to be misinformation. And when the State Department spends billions and billions of dollars to, quote, counter disinformation, you know what that is. You know that that's smearing all of us. And when Texty goes out of their way to write a piece and gives us a prominent mention, I think that's a little bit of an honor, and we should be honored. And the fact that they made this graphic, we're like right in the center, right? Along with Angela McCurdle in the gray zone. I think it's great. I think it's beautiful. We should get that in a frame and hang that someplace. That's like a frameable picture. That's like awesome. So thank you for that, John. That's a great picture. How integrated are the Chinese and North Korean economies, and what more can be done to help North Korea's economy? Well, China and North Korea do trade with each other, and they do have a relationship, but that relationship is limited because of the UN sanctions. Russia and China both need the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to remain intact. And that's that's something a lot of people don't understand. They say, well, why do Russia and China have sanctions against North Korea? Because the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty is very important to Russia and China, because if that treaty goes away, then the USA can give all of its allies nuclear weapons, and then they have to give all of their allies nuclear weapons, and pretty soon the whole world blows up with nuclear weapons. So, they have gone out of their way to keep that treaty intact. And so in order to keep that treaty intact, they must, to some degree, go along with the sanctions on North Korea. However, and this is very important, they still are able to trade some. Now, the best way, you're asking, how can we help the North Korean economy? The main thing we need to do is advocate for the right to travel there, and advocate that the cooperation, the peace process that Donald Trump was doing continue, right? We need to talk about how amazing it was that Donald Trump went to North Korea, and that we want that to continue. That would be the main thing we could do. We have to just make clear that we want the peace process to continue. We want the sanctions to be lifted, but we want the freedom to travel there. And we want Donald Trump to go there and make a deal with them and continue to negotiate, right? We support the peace process. Our ability to do anything related to the North Korean economy is very, very limited, because we can't. I mean, it's just locked out. You cannot transfer money there. You can't buy products from there. I mean, you can't. It's not a matter of doing it and you go to jail. You just can't. If North Korea writes you a check and you take it to the bank, it won't cash. They are locked out of the global economy. But Russia and China will trade with them. And I think the best thing we can do is advocate that peace process on the Korean Peninsula continue. That is the main thing I think we can do to help North Korea's economy. Thank you, Junior. All right. Any similarities between Rome and the USA's decline? Well, I gave a whole presentation on that a few years ago. Maybe I can find a clip from that presentation to show. But basically, the main thing is the USA is declining because it has an outmoded system, and that our system is largely based on holding back development around the world, which is what the Roman Empire was based on. It was also based on holding back development around the world. And because it was based on holding back development around the world, when you have that kind of relationship with history, it's not good. So yeah, I've got two clips here I'll show from my talk I gave on the fall of Rome, right? And you can watch my presentation on the fall of Rome. If you want to watch my whole speech, you can watch it, but I'll show you a couple of clips. It's funny because, okay, let me just, all right. Okay. Talk on fall of Rome. All right. Okay. So here's the full speech, right? I gave a whole hour-long presentation on the fall of the Roman Empire. It's a few years back, but yeah, I'll put on a couple clips from it, a couple points I made. All right, here's the first one. It's funny because we put out this palm card to promote the event, and we put "Is America the New Rome? Will it fall?" and an evening of socialist education. And I think the reason we put this bottom part, an evening of socialist education, is because there's a lot of stupidity out there when it comes to the fall of Rome. Whenever you hear somebody talking about the fall of the Roman Empire, a political leader, a commentator, you almost want to cringe, right? There's a recording of Richard Nixon, for example, when he was in the White House. And he was really upset, and the show All in the Family had just come out, and there'd been an episode that featured a gay couple.
He was just furious about it. And he's sitting there, and there's an audio recording of Nixon in the White House, and he's sitting there and says, oh my God, what is this? This is the fall of a civilization. Oh my God, don't you know the last 5 Roman emperors were a bunch of fags? This is awful. He's sitting there. Well, I'm not here tonight to tell you that the Roman Empire fell because of homosexuality. If you were hoping to hear that, you came to the wrong event. I found a lot of videos of guys in their Make America Great Again hats, and they're like, you know why the Roman Empire fell? It's because a bunch of immigrants came in there and took all the jobs. They didn't put up a wall. No, the Roman Empire did not fall. It did not fall because of immigration. So if you're looking for someone to tell you that, you came to the wrong meeting. But why talk about Rome, right? It's thousands of years ago. But the thing is, if you can understand the fall of the Roman Empire, if you can understand historical events, and develop a scientific and dialectical understanding of history, and apply that analysis and those methods to understanding historical events, if you can do that, you can understand what's happening in the world today, and you can understand how we might move toward a better future. Now, before we get to exactly why the Roman Empire fell, I think we need to throw out a question. Was the fall of Rome a good thing? Was the fall of Rome a good thing, right? Now, your gut instinct, you want to say yes, right? Because the Roman Empire was associated with so many evil things: slavery, plunder, occupation of peoples. It's perfectly correct to admire Spartacus and the heroic slave revolt that took place in the 1st century BC in the Italian peninsula, where slaves broke their chains and rose up and killed their masters and fought for freedom. It's absolutely correct to admire the Scottish warriors who fought for the liberation of their people in Britain from the Romans, or the zealots of ancient Palestine who fought for the liberation of their people. It's absolutely correct. But that doesn't answer the question. Was the fall of the Roman Empire actually a good thing? And most historians, most classicists will tell you, no, it was not, right? Clifford Ando, probably the most well-respected classicist, in a lecture he gave to the Oriental Institute, he's from the University of Chicago, he talks about how archaeologists have dug up the bones of people, right? And they've shown that after the fall of the Roman Empire, in the aftermath of the fall of the Roman Empire, the human life expectancy went down significantly, right? After the fall of the Roman Empire, calorie intake and nutrition that people had significantly went down. After the fall of the Roman Empire, things across Europe got more and more unstable. And it actually took Europe 1,100 years to get back to the population level it had had at the height of the Roman Empire in the first 2 centuries AD, right? It took 1,100 years for Europe to return to that population level. So by any objective measure, the fall of the Roman Empire was quite a bad thing. It made people's lives significantly worse. And it's interesting that at the time the United States was being created as a country, one of the most popular books in the English language was Edward Gibbon's book, The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which was being published in volumes. I believe 8 different volumes of the book were published. And if you read the writings of, George Washington, the letters of Thomas Jefferson and others, they were reading this, and they were obsessed with this. And the reason that a lot of cities in upstate New York have names similar to, Roman names or Roman figures is because of that. The reason that in Washington, D.C., a lot of the way the roads are laid out, and a lot of the architecture is modeled on Rome is because of that. That there was wide-ranging discussion at the time of the Renaissance and later the Enlightenment throughout Europe asking what went wrong with the Roman Empire. Why did the Roman Empire fall? What was going on?
All right. So that's the first clip I'll show you. And then this is another clip from that presentation while we're at it, right? So hold on. Yeah, all right. Yeah, this is another clip from that presentation. Since you asked about the fall of Rome, and you can watch the full presentation.
When you ask people about why Rome fell, most people will give you an answer that involves barbarian invasions, right? Barbarian invasions. People say, well, Rome fell because of barbarian invasions. Well, what was that? At the time the Roman Empire was in decline, you had Germanic tribes mainly, Vandals, Ostrogoths, Visigoths, that were pushing back and repelling the Roman Empire. And Rome, even though it was a military society, became less and less capable of actually fighting them. It got to be so dysfunctional that even though Rome was a military society, it was incapable of having its own army. It got to the point that in the final years of the Roman Empire, there were Germanic tribes they hired and paid to fight other Germanic tribes that were opposing them. They were incapable of even getting their own army together. But if you look at the fall of the Roman Empire, and you look at this clash between these barbarian tribes and the Roman Empire, you can see this is a clash of two different civilizations with two different values, right? So your typical Roman was a hedonist. They lived for pleasure, their wild parties, and they also loved all the militarism and plundering and aggression that enabled a small group of people to live that luxurious lifestyle. The god that was worshipped by Romans was, one of the favored gods was Bacchus, ripped off from the Greek Dionysus, right? It was the god of pleasure and celebration. Bacchus was the beloved god of the Romans, but who was the god of these Germanic tribes that were fighting against the Romans? The god was Odin. And Odin is a very, very different god with very, very different values being put forward by these Germanic tribes. So Odin, he's the god of the Norsemen and of the Germanic tribes. He's got a long white beard, according to the legend. He comes around once a year to restore life to the earth around Yuletide or the winter solstice. And Odin is all about grit and sacrifice and struggle, right? Odin has a heaven called Valhalla, but you can only get into this heaven if you've died in battle. So as the old Norsemen were dying in their beds of sickness, they would take a knife and slice themselves open in the hopes that when they reached the halls of Valhalla, Odin would think that they had died on the battlefield and then would allow them into Valhalla. It was believed that Valhalla was always warm because it was lit by the eternal fire, and that was the source of Odin's strength, this eternal fire. When he came to the earth once a year, it was to restore the life and bring some of that eternal fire and start the process that spring could come again, right? And I feel like as much as very few people in this world are worshiping Odin these days, I understand some of the neo-Nazis out there still worship Odin, right? Some of them. But other than that, no one really believes in Odin. But I feel like Odinism is very well alive today. Right? So every year, they start the war on Christmas, right? Fox News starts telling us that, oh my gosh, there's some school somewhere where they have winter break instead of Christmas break. Or, oh my gosh, there's some public building that is not having a Christmas tree, right? It's a war on Christmas. Oh my God, once a year. And on top of that, what do they repeat during this war on Christmas? They say, oh my gosh, the USA is a Christian nation. The USA is a Christian nation. Well, it's funny. It's funny because I think in a lot of ways you could argue that the USA is a rather Odinist nation, right? We know that US culture is deeply influenced by Germans, right, and Germanic stuff, right? What's the most popular American food? Stereotypical. You got hamburgers, that's from Hamburg, Germany. You got hot dogs. What's a hot dog? It's a Frankfurter, right? The most common last name in the United States is Miller, also Mueller, right? I mean, there's a huge Germanic influence on US society. And I think a lot of the values that people associate with the United States, especially a lot of the things that those of us who believe in socialism oppose, are very Odinist, right? So U.S. society, what is it? It's pull yourself up by your bootstraps, right? Right? Give it some good old-fashioned elbow grease, right? This idea that you can do anything if you just go out and work hard enough, right? And that you shouldn't feel compassion for people that are destitute or without what they need because they just haven't worked hard enough, right? Right, because anyone can do anything if they just go out and work hard enough. And don't pay attention to other people. It's all about individualism. A man's house is his castle, right? That's very Odinist, right? And it's interesting, and a lot of the criticism that gets thrown at socialists and leftists is very Odinist, I would say, right? So they say, well, that America and capitalism is all about the American dream. It's all about people coming from a new land and making great sacrifices and working really hard, and that's capitalism. And what are these socialists? They're a bunch of lazy weaklings who just want everything handed to them, right? They're just a bunch of weak, pathetic people, and they don't understand what America's all about, and they ought to move to some other country, but the American way is working really hard and struggle and grit, right? That's what we hear from the right wing constantly. But think about it. I'd say that it's completely off because I want everyone in their minds to picture Fidel Castro. Was Fidel Castro a weakling or a snowflake? No. What about Hugo Chavez, right? Picture Hugo Chavez, right? Just a pathetic, weakling, whining snowflake. Does anyone here know what Stalin literally means? Right? And I think if you look over the history of socialism around the world, you can see a lot of that struggle and grit and sacrifice. Talk about the 5-year plans, right? So in 1928, the Soviet Union announced to the world that they were going to have a 5-year economic plan, and they showed it to all kinds of advisors and different people, and the world said this is impossible. No country can ever do this. No country could possibly carry out this 5-year plan. So the Soviet leaders came back and they said, well, what we're going to do is we're going to carry out this 5-year plan in 4 years. And they painted that slogan everywhere, 5-year plan in 4 years. And they did it. One of my favorite writers is Anna Louise Strong, and she's a journalist. She was from Seattle, and she lived in the Soviet Union, and she saw it with her own eyes. A country that was deeply impoverished became a global superpower. They built the world's largest hydroelectrical power plant at the time, the Dnieper Dam, right? They built the world's largest steel industry, right? They brought running water and electricity to the entire country. An entire country was basically illuminated. There was all this planning, right? Or you can talk, I mean, it wasn't just the Soviet Union, right? You can talk about what China has done. China used to be the sick man of Asia, one of the poorest countries in the world. Today, China is producing half the steel in the world. They've got the world's largest hydroelectrical power plant, the Three Gorges Dam. They have the world's biggest telecommunications manufacturer. They have raised 700 million people out of poverty. Huge, huge achievements have been carried out. But you can go beyond Russia and China, right? Talk to Egyptians, right? What is the pride and joy of Egypt? It's the Aswan Dam, this huge hydroelectrical facility constructed by Abdul Nasser, the Arab socialist leader, in coordination with the Soviet Union. It's just a huge, huge achievement of infrastructure, bringing electricity to Egypt. Or why is the name Fidel Castro known all over the world? Why do people know about Fidel Castro? It's because he took a deeply impoverished island and built it up and developed it and built a healthcare system that is just the wonder, the model that people all over the world aspire to. Has anyone ever heard the phrase gung-ho? Gung-ho? Well, where does that come from? Well, that comes from the fact that during the Second World War, the U.S. military, the U.S. Marine Corps, was so impressed with the military tactics that Mao was using to fight the Japanese invaders, that they actually started adopting some of the tactics. And what does gung-ho mean, right? It means all together, all for one, joint effort, right? So tell me, the first person in space, was his name Joe Bob, Steve Smith, Bill Allen Richard, what was his name? Oh yeah, Yuri Gagarin, right? It was a Russian, right? Socialism doesn't invent anything, Caleb. Really, well, who are the first people in outer space then? And you don't have to take my word for it, right? Read Time magazine, what Time magazine was saying back in the 1930s. Read what was being said by Albert Einstein, the most well-respected physicist. You can read what was being written in the journals of the young Nelson Mandela. Read what he has to say. At the time that the Soviet Union was developing and emerging, you had the Communist Party of the United States that was a massive organization. And it was telling people, look, we've lost that American dream. We've lost that American spirit, that entrepreneurialism, that motor-mindedness. We've lost it. But if you go to the Soviet Union, they said the Soviet Union is the new America, and communism is 20th century Americanism. That's one of the slogans that they actually used. Socialism is all about grit and struggle and sacrifice, but it's about building up and building up your community, building up your world, but doing it in a way that doesn't come at the expense of somebody else. You know, people say socialists want everyone to be poor. No, I would say it's the opposite. Socialists want everybody to be rich. They just don't want anyone to get rich by exploiting somebody else or by hurting and making somebody else poor. That's the idea. You know, and I want to say that socialism has actually played that role in my own life. You know, I remember when I was 15 years old, there was a day, and I'll remember it, it was very much one of the best days of my life. I didn't know it at the time. But I remember I was 15 years old, and I went to a Marxist bookstore, right? And I was there, and it was so exciting. I lived in this tiny little town in Ohio. I'd never met a Marxist, but I finally got to visit a Marxist bookstore. So I'm at this Marxist bookstore. Remember, one of these old, 1960s baby boomer radicals takes a stack of newspapers, right? He says, all right, we're going to go out and sell the paper. And I thought, oh boy, what? And like, no, we're going to go out and sell the paper. And I'm thinking, like, so you want me to walk up to people I don't know, try to convince them of communist ideas, and convince them so much that they'll pay actual cash money for a communist publication? Is this a joke? Like, no, we're going to do this, right? So I walk out there, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, right? Believe it or not, I was rather shy at one point in my life. And, I'm walking out there, and it's, all right, go walk up to that guy, try to sell him a paper. Oh my God, no, just go ahead. I'm walking up to, hi, I've got your newspaper here about communism. You want to buy the, but then I did it again. And then I did it again. And I did it again, and I realized that I was pretty good at selling newspapers, right? That communism kind of lit my own internal fire or eternal fire within me, right? And that's very, very beautiful, I feel like. You know, one thing that they'll always tell you, right? It's one of these witticisms we hear is people say, don't be a fanatic, right? Don't be a fanatic. We don't need fanatics, right? We need people that are moderate in all things. Fanaticism is something you should avoid. Well, imagine that right now you had just had a heart attack and you're being rushed to the hospital, right? So you're in that ambulance, you're on your way to the hospital. Tell me, is anybody in that situation going to say, now, be sure that the doctor you take me to is a moderate guy. Now, don't give me somebody who's got straight A's in medical school and just no, make sure he's a moderate guy who likes to drink beer and just chill. I mean, we don't want an extreme doctor who's just obsessed with things. We want a chill, moderate guy. Oh no. If you're on the way to the hospital and your life is in danger, you want to be treated by a fanatical doctor, right? Right? And I would say that the crisis that we're in here in the United States requires fanatical solutions.
So there you go, Alex. That is your long answer to the fall of Rome. So there you go. Gave me an opportunity to revisit an old presentation. Now, I only have one more super chat here from Jane Fredericks, but I do want to give other people a chance. So I'm going to do something odd that I haven't, I've done this before, but I am going to put on a unificationist religious song. I must be the only person on the planet who plays both communist music and unificationist songs. But I just spoke out at LA Family Church. I gave a talk on North and South Korea and peaceful reunification. So while I'm waiting for any more super chats that might come in, and then I'll, before I answer Jane's question and any others, I'm going to put on the song Pledge, which is a unificationist hymn. I believe it's originally in Korean, but this is obviously an English version of the unificationist hymn called Pledge. And I will put on Pledge, the unificationist hymn. And then from there, I will answer the questions. I see one more super chat has already come in. I will answer that. But yeah, this is the LA Family Church Band performing the Korean unificationist hymn Pledge. So here we go.
Falling
Yeah. So there you go. Like I said, I'm probably the only person on the universe who plays both communist music and unificationist hymns on my streams. But there you go. You know, hey, we are innovators. So there you go. So first we got Jane Fredericks. Please, can you talk about Argentina's current political situation and some of the history leading to it? Well, I think there's a couple factors. So, you know, Argentina is, you know, it's in the what they call the southern cone of Latin America. And you have some very effective Bonapartist figures. You know, Juan Perón represents kind of an anti-imperialist Bonapartism that was quite popular. And Juan Perón was like an admirer of Fidel Castro in the Soviet Union, but he also, you know, he wasn't a full, you know, Argentina never fully became a socialist country, right? There was a lot of state intervention to build up and protection of domestic industries and such. And Peronism is a kind of populistic Bonapartism. And there's even like within Peronism, you have left Peronism and right Peronism, right? And the left Peronists admired Fidel Castro. The right Peronists were admiring like fascism. And Peronism is a unique, Peronismo, they call it, is a unique mixed bag. In the 80s, you had a military dictatorship in Argentina that imposed neoliberal economic reforms and killed a lot of students. Then, you know, in the 2000s in Argentina, you had well, first of all, right, the late 90s was a really bad time for South America because a lot of the investment in South America in the 90s came from Asia, right? And in the late 90s, you had the collapse of the Asian markets. You know, and what happened is the United States had propped up a number of governments in Asia as a barrier against communism. And one of those governments was South Korea. One of these other governments was the government on Taiwan. They also Singapore and others. And the United States had kind of propped up and allowed these governments to, you know, maintain very authoritarian and very state-controlled economies, or as a barrier against communism. In South Korea, you had Park Chung-hee, and then the military government of South Korea that built up Samsung and POSCO, et cetera. And Taiwan, you had, you know, the son of Chiang Kai-shek was kind of the military dictator in the 80s who, you know, built a lot of industries and such. And in Singapore, you had Lee Kuan Yew. And those governments were not going to go along with austerity, and they were using the military and the state to build up the economies. And so George Soros and a lot of American investors, they pulled all their money out of the Asian markets very dramatically to cause a crash because they didn't like the authoritarian governments that were there, that the USA had tolerated as a barrier against communism. They were opposing austerity. They didn't, you know, they were not going to go along with the cuts in social spending, et cetera. So you had the crash on the Asian markets, and that caused an economic crisis. And you'll remember Argentina, like, you know, they went through like 4 presidents in a week. They had insane inflation, you know, and their economy was just crashing and burning thanks to the IMF and the World Bank. And they had mass unemployment, and the government, you know, they had a president for a couple of days, and then he stepped down. They had another president, and then he stepped down. And, you know, neoliberal free market reforms were really wrecking the place. So then you had the rise of the Kirchners, Cristina Kirchner. And Cristina Kirchner, you know, she's an anti-imperialist. She's a populist. She's not a communist, right? You know, again, she didn't take Argentina fully to socialism, but she was an admirer of Fidel Castro. She was an admirer of Venezuela, but she never, you know, Argentina never became fully socialist. But you know, the Kirchners came in and they were opponents of neoliberalism. And they opposed neoliberal economic reforms, and they were, you know, from the left, but they were like left Peronists, left nationalists, right? And they were aligned with the government of Venezuela, the government of Bolivia, et cetera. And you look at the Kirchners, they were never, you know, they were kind of like Lula da Silva in Brazil, in that they were defenders of the welfare state. They were kind of economic nationalists. They were not full-on revolutionary socialists. Then you saw Cristina Kirchner. She left office, and then there was lawfare against her, right? They've charged her with corruption. They've done everything they can. And Cristina Kirchner took some pretty heroic stances. For example, there was a bombing of the Israeli embassy in Argentina that the U.S. government has blamed on Iran. And Cristina Kirchner, she very famously said, no, we've never found any link to Iran doing that. and she stood up and she's defended Iran. She's very critical of Israel. She's very critical of the United States. And, and Christina Kirchner, they've charged her with corruption. They've done everything they can to keep her out of politics. And the big problem in Latin America, it's very similar to Brazil in that the left never fully delivered, right? And because of that, because when the left doesn't fully deliver, eventually people get tired. And then the far right tends to come in, right? And in Brazil, right? Lula da Silva, and then later, the next president that they had, Dilma Rousseff, never fully delivered, right? They made some positive improvements, but they never moved the country in a full-on revolutionary direction. So the country's kind of constipated, basically. It's like, but it never really. And so then you get the pendulum swings in the other direction. And that's what happened with Christina Kirchner. And that's what happened with the left in Argentina. They provided a lot of jobs to people. They enhanced the welfare state. They had economic protections, but they still couldn't fully deliver. And because they couldn't fully deliver, the opposition, they were able to jail Christina Kirchner, arrest her. They were able to do a lot of things, which they did to Lula da Silva too. Lula da Silva was thrown in prison to keep him from running for president. And in Brazil, you had the president, who got in was Bolsonaro. Now Bolsonaro's out, Lula da Silva's back in. But in Argentina, right, Christina Kirchner was out, and now we have Javier Milei. And Javier Milei, his whole thing is he says that Argentina's been socialist for 100 years and we need to have real capitalism back. And if you look at what Javier Milei is doing in Argentina, he's wrecking Argentina's economy. I mean, it's been like in free fall since he's been in there. He's cutting government programs in an insane way, right? All kinds of programs that people rely on in order to survive, all kinds of subsidies. Government employees are a big section of the Argentine economy that goes back to the Peronist years. In order to stimulate the economy, the government hired a lot of people. Now they're cutting the jobs of government employees massively. And what is the result of that? Well, all those people that had government jobs are not spending their money. And I mean, you look at what's going on. Javier Milei is just completely wrecking the Argentine economy. Now, the rise of Javier Milei is related to a couple things. One of the biggest factors in the rise of Javier Milei was that in Argentina, just like in the United States, you have a layer of gig economy workers. And this is very interesting. But, if you're a worker on the job, right? If you work at a restaurant, you work at a factory, you work, as a government employee, you have certain protections. You get a certain minimum wage, you get certain hours, etc. But if you're a gig economy worker, if you're an Uber driver, right? If you sell shit on the internet, you don't have the same level of protection. But in Argentina, they tax you as if you were a small business owner. So there's a whole layer of young men in particular, not just men, I'm sure there's women who do it too, who they survive in kind of a gig economy way in Argentina, and they're treated as small business owners by the government, and they're hit in their taxes, and they don't enjoy the protections that workers on the job get. And because of that, they very much resent the government. And, that Javier Milei promised all those guys he was going to get rid of all the licenses they have to pay. He was going to get rid of all the crazy taxes that they have to pay. And that he presented himself as the champion of the gig economy workers of Argentina, who don't see themselves as workers. They see themselves as small business owners. They don't have any boss. They just work when they feel like it. They're free, right? And that is kind of how he presented himself, and that the labor movement of Argentina, but also of the whole world, needs to figure out, what do we do about Uber drivers? What do we do about people who sell shit on Amazon? What do we do about people who, work on Fiverr, right? Graphic design artists on Fiverr, right? There's a lot of workers in the gig economy who kind of fall through the cracks. But they see themselves as small business owners. They see themselves as their own boss. And a lot of them develop kind of a libertarian perspective because of that. And I think that's an interesting aspect, right, of how Javier Milei kind of appealed to gig economy, young men in particular. And there's a culture, there's a word that they have in Spanish. I don't know what it is, but it basically means hustler, right? Young guys who go out there and hustle and make money. right? And there's a culture of young guys that are trying to figure out different schemes so they can hustle and make money, right? And that it's kind of a thing. A lot of young men work, but how can I be a hustler? How can I make money, right? And that he appealed. He's like, I'm gonna support these young hustler men, these young men who make money on the internet. That was Javier Milei. Javier Milei, for years, he's been kind of a right-wing clown with his stupid haircut or whatever. He was just a right-wing economics professor who would go on right-wing talk shows and act silly and act stupid. And then he saw a moment where a lot of people in Argentina are very mad at the status quo, and the left has not fully delivered. The left didn't fully deliver, and things lined up right, and now he's there. But one thing that annoys me about Javier Milei, and then we'll move on to the next one. One thing that annoys me about Javier Milei is that Javier Milei seems to have it in his head. Not Javier Milei, I'm sorry. What annoys me about Javier Milei, but it's more about people. A lot of people have it in their head that he's some kind of heroic fighter against the globalist elite. I don't know how that works. He wants Argentina to join NATO. He is so pro-Israel that he's converting to Judaism. That's how pro-Israel he is. Okay. He is anti-China. He had Argentina quit the BRICS. He's anti-Russian. I mean, he is the most pro-US imperialism, pro-Israel, pro-NATO, anti-Russia. He's not fighting the globalists. He's a neocon. He's a neoconservative. He's just a George W. Bush conservative. Anti-Russia, anti-China. He loves NATO. He loves Israel. He wants Argentina to adopt the US dollar. Like, this guy is not fighting imperialism. And there are a lot of people that are very good and realize that sending billions of dollars to Ukraine is not helping. A lot of people that realize China's not our enemy who still have a crush on this guy, right? And they're convinced, oh, look, he's sticking it to the elite. No, he's not. There's nothing revolutionary about this man. He runs his mouth. He's foul-mouthed like Donald Trump. He's got a bad hairdo, but that's it. I mean, there's nothing he's doing that is actually anti-imperialist in its essence, right? I mean, he has not done anything other than create a lot of instability in Argentina, which maybe the imperialists want stability. This guy is an imperialist warmonger. So there you go. That's my thoughts on Javier Milei and Argentina. I hope that was helpful, Jane. I'm not impressed with the guy, and I just don't think he does any good. And I don't get how all these people think he's some kind of revolutionary. Argentina has problems, no doubt, and the left, again, failed to deliver, but there you go. All right. Have you been on RBN? Yeah, I was on RBN a couple years ago. Nick Cruz, great guy. That Rome guy, I don't know anything about him, okay? I really don't know anything about him, just that he started randomly attacking me on social media one day because I talked about how Abraham Lincoln was supported by Karl Marx, and he just randomly started attacking me for that in the most childish and juvenile way. And I showed him all the glowing articles Marx wrote for the New York Tribune about Lincoln and all of that, and he just oh, that's bullshit, and then he called me a Nazi. He said there's no difference between patriotic socialism and national socialism. The same thing. He called me a Nazi. So I really don't like that Rome guy. He is really rude and nasty and disrespectful. There's absolutely no reason. I'm so sorry for not being stupid like he is, right? It's really, really annoying to me that there are all these people. It's just like, I'm so sorry that I actually know history. I'm so sorry that I've actually read the history of the Marxist movement. The Marxists in the United States aligned themselves with Lincoln. That is a historical fact. Lincoln was not a communist. Lincoln said many racist things, but Lincoln led a coalition to defeat the slaveholders. And the Marxist position has always been that Lincoln was on the progressive side. And he's attacked me viciously and called me a Nazi and attacked my personal life and all of this just because I think that what Karl Marx said about Abraham Lincoln being a progressive figure who helped defeat slavery was a good thing. And it's just like he's not book smart, okay, and I am, and so I guess I just have to be a bad person. I don't know why he can't just go, okay, all right, maybe I didn't know that about Lincoln, or, oh, okay, I guess Lincoln, despite all the bad things, did play. I mean, but no, I have to be a bad person, right? And that's the juvenility there. But the other thing, I don't follow him. I don't pay attention to him. All I know about him is he's just this jackass who attacked me. But I've been told that he promotes left adventurism, that he's got all the kinds of YouTube videos about how black people have guns and they're going to violently overthrow the government, and or something like that. So, I would watch out for that, because right now the Uhuru movement, they're not trying to violently overthrow the government. They're just trying to run farmers markets in black communities, and they're charging them with being left adventurous. So if this guy is publicly on the internet going around talking about how black people are going to get guns and violently overthrow the government, that sounds like provocateur shit to me. That's what that sounds like, right? I'm sorry, the Black Panthers actually had guns, but they weren't going around telling people, oh, we're going to violently overthrow the government. And it makes me wonder what's going on there. And the fact that he just randomly, the only encounter I ever had with this guy is him just randomly coming at me. And no matter how many links I sent him, oh, I was retarded, I was a Nazi, and really vicious personal attacks. And it's just like, okay, so I don't know who you are. I just know that you're part of this, and you start calling me a Nazi, and I'm just showing you historical facts, and you're attacking me for it. Not a big fan. But that Nick guy, he's fine. But I will say this. Look, and, Sabi Sobs, I went on her show before. I love the work that they do. But I will say this, okay? And I'm just speaking from my heart here. I don't want there to be disagreements among anti-imperialists. Are you all hearing this? I do not want there to be disagreements among anti-imperialists. I want Max Blumenthal and, Gray Zone and RT and, Jimmy Dore and who else? I just want all the anti-imperialists to get along. That's what I would like. I would like as many people to get along. What I have noticed about RBN, Sabi Sobs, and all of that is they look for any opportunity to see drama in our community, and they see it as an opportunity to make a buck. Okay? They do. All right? And they love drama streams, right? They love when one person fights with another person. They love when there's gossip about somebody. And like Nick Brana, friend of mine, right? And that whole thing against Nick Brana is bullshit. And I think some of them have even admitted it's bullshit, but they gave it a huge amount of attention because it's drama, and they can make a buck off of it. And I don't appreciate that, right? I really don't. I really, really don't. And that is one of the most toxic aspects of the online space, is everyone's looking to fight with everybody. There's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of people that are looking for any opportunity to stir up drama, right? Any opportunity to stir up drama because they want to make a buck, right? And that, and it's not, I don't appreciate that. And I don't really pay attention to what RBN does now, but at one point I was paying more attention to them, and it seemed like they were giving a lot of play to the bullshit against Nick Brana. They were giving a lot of play to fights between other people. And it's, they're on there whenever there's some big fight going on among people in our circles. They want to be on there. They want both sides watching them so that they can, be moderating the fight. And I don't appreciate that. And again, why is this Rome guy? The only thing I ever hear about him is him coming at me about how I'm an evil person for supporting Lincoln, right? Like maybe if he really was concerned about that, maybe he should have me on his stream and we can talk about it or something. But it's like he wanted to fight with me because he was trying to prove to somebody that and it's like, again, this online culture is toxic. Okay. It's not real organizing. It's an online thing where everyone's trying to put somebody else down so that they can get attention from somebody else. And it's not helpful, and it's just not helpful. And there's big problems in these anti-imperialist circles of, I'm trying to build an in real life organization. My whole purpose with this stream, I want to recruit you to an in real life group called the Center for Political Innovation. I'm not going to win the internet, right? The internet is rigged. It's been rigged for a long time. I am trying to recruit you to an in real life group called CPI, right? And we need a real network of people that can get real shit done. And that's what I'm banking on. And that's it. So there you go. Oh, we have another one. Everything historically progressive that does not keep reinventing itself will ultimately get overtaken by history and become a brake on progress. I agree. That's actually an astute observation, right? If you don't constantly innovate and adjust to new circumstances, you will just become something outmoded. I think you're absolutely right. That's why we're the Center for Political Innovation. That's why I've been telling people here, yes, it's study Marxism, Leninism, know the basics and all of that. But I'm telling you, the communist world, a lot has changed, right? I believe in God. I do believe in the power of ideas. I'm not a strict materialist, right? And I look at communist countries around the world. They're not the same as they were during the Cold War. They have market sectors. They do things differently. And that we need to be constantly innovating. If the situation changes in 24 hours, the tactics must also change in 24 hours, and that we've got to be constantly reinventing and adjusting to new circumstances, constantly developing new analysis. If not, we become stale. And that a lot of people, they become like a one-trick pony, right? They learn a few phrases and they learn a few slogans and they stop learning. And you got to learn, because if you don't learn, there was a communist group I was around, and I remember I found the leaflet for their convention that they had from like 1980, before I was born, and it was all the exact same talks that they were having when I was in it. And I looked at that and I thought, that's horrible. And that's kind of, they didn't learn anything. You have to be adjusting and adapting. You have to learn, and you have to develop new innovations and new ideas. I'm always reading on topics I haven't learned about before. I'm always trying to develop new ways of explaining things. I'm always trying to wrangle with new concepts. That's something I've always tried to do. If you stop learning, you really can't be interacting with the world around you. So that is my thought. So anyway, folks, all right. Well, it's been fun. I will be back tomorrow night. So yeah, I'll be back tomorrow night, and it's been fun. I'm going to put on the closing music. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been a good stream. I'll be back tomorrow. I will be back tomorrow. Tomorrow. There we go. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.